Yeah, tiny, tiny print. I mean, it's
Are you started?
it's
Okay.
got everything I need,
Linnea?
but it's like trying to find shit's just
Linnea?
crazy. We're ready to go. Okay. I'll call the meeting of the McHenry County Zoning Board of Appeals to order. This hearing is a continuation of the January 30th, 2020. Can you hear me better? Okay. This hearing is a continuation of the January 30th, 2025 hearing. Today's hearing date, time, and location were announced on the record on January 30th, 2025. Therefore, notice of publication, certified mail, and posting were not required for today's continuation. When we finished the hearing on the 30th of January, the petitioner had finished their testimony and everyone had asked questions of their testimony, but the Zoning Board of Appeals had asked for two things on behalf of the petitioner, a water study as well as a traffic study. We received a traffic study, but do you have anything for a water study? Please introduce yourself, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Tyler Wilkie. I'm the attorney for the petitioners, and I'm an attorney with Zank, Cohenwright, and Saladin in Crystal Lake. The Olagues had contacted me after their last zoning meeting. We farm in McHenry County, and we've got background as far as their use that they're requesting from the board today. We did submit the traffic study as requested by the board. My understanding from reviewing the transcripts was not necessarily a water study, but an indication of the water usage that would be used by the property. As such, the Olagues have metered what their current usage is in their current place that they're processing, and we have testimony to submit to the board for that. Further, I would ask the board to take note of the health ordinance for high-capacity wells, and if I may, a high-capacity well is a private, semi-private, non-community, non-potable, where the rate or capacity of the water withdrawal is equal to or in excess of 100,000 gallons during any 24-hour period. That high-capacity well will then trigger a hydrological and geological study.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you weren't at the last hearing?
Correct.
Can I swear you in?
You may.
Do you affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So I would just note that from the McHenry County Health Ordinance, that's the requirement and the definition of a high-capacity well. And if I may, I don't know if you need to re-swear in the petitioners.
No, I think everybody that was at the prior hearing has, what do you, or Anna, what do you think?
Anna Kurtzman, senior planner for the record. Although this is a continuation of the previous hearing, you might want to introduce the board just so we have it in the record. And then I'm certain that there's some people here that may not have been at the first meeting, so we might as well just do a generic.
Sure, okay, we'll just go ahead and do that. So we'll just take a break from your
Thank you.
testimony for 1 second. So I'll have the board introduce themselves and the township in which they reside, starting on my left.
Robert Cozen, Algonquin Township.
Mary Donner, Greenwood Township.
Charlie Eldridge, Richmond Township.
Linnea Kuster, Alden Township.
Vicki Gardner, Nunda Township.
Kurt Schnabel, Riley Township.
Bill Kernick, Grafton Township.
And I know some of the people in the audience were here at the last hearing, but we're going to swear everybody in. If you think you would like to speak today, you would be able to make a comment later in the meeting. So anybody who thinks they would like to speak today, I will swear everyone in. So please raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony you give today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And I just want to reaffirm that this is a quasi-judicial hearing. It's not a rally or anything, so there's no applause or anything. We want just this meeting is being recorded for the purposes of the county board. And so We will go ahead and proceed with the testimony then. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Again, if I may, Ms. Olage, could you state your name for the record?
My name is Claudia Olage.
And you are the petitioner in this matter?
Yes, I am the petitioner.
Okay. And how long have you been operating in the field of meat processing?
I've been operating for 10 years in the field of meat processing.
Since the last hearing, have you monitored your water usage of the current facility where you're processing at?
Yes.
And based on that monitoring, on average, how many gallons of water per animal are you using?
Per animal, we are using 4.25 gallons on average.
And then, on average, how many gallons of water do you use to power wash the building at the end of the day?
We use 100 gallons.
Okay. And then, when we had discussed this, there's two ways to check. There's what you use, and then there's what is hauled away, correct?
Correct.
Because animal liquids and the water that you use in the process are stored and then hauled away by a sanitary company?
Correct.
Okay. Based on your past records, how many gallons on average per animal are hauled away?
16.8, including wash water and animal liquids.
Okay. So, in your professional opinion, would 20 gallons per animal be a number that would liberally cover your average use of water?
In my professional opinion, yes, I believe so.
Okay. At the last hearing, we heard that on average, 500 animals would be the top end of your processing is limited by time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Based on that math, we would be looking at the usage of approximately 10,000 gallons per week on the high side, correct?
Correct.
Did you apply for a high-capacity well?
No, I did not.
And then, do you know that per day the health department designates a high-capacity well, or how many gallons that is?
That's 100,000 gallons in a 24-hour period.
Thank you. Would the board wish to entertain questions regarding that water usage at this point, or would you like us to continue on with all the testimony?
Those were the only two things we were looking for was.
Okay. If I may, Mr. Corcoran is here. He prepared the traffic study. If you would like, I can have him
Certainly.
explain that traffic study.
Yeah, if he
the board?
would identify himself.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Corcoran. I'm Director of Traffic Engineering at Erickson Engineering Associates out of Grayslake, Illinois. And I prepared the traffic study that's in front of you today. Basically, we looked at the site, the existing roadways, what we would expect the traffic to be generated by the meatpacking plant, and the potential for roadway improvements for their access point. You know, and I think everyone knows it's, you know, if we, you know, looking at the aerial, the site along the south side of the site is Nelson Road, a 2-lane rural cross-section roadway under the jurisdiction of McHenry County DOT. It's got a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, and there's no turn lanes at the entrance into this property. Their driveway is at the southwest corner of that property and is actually a shared driveway with the property next door. They have easements so that the two property owners can use the common driveway. We looked at how much traffic was going to be generated by, or I'm sorry, back up. And then the most recent traffic count on Nelson Road was 1,800 cars per day. So the two-way traffic on Nelson is 1,800 per day. And then we looked at the trip generation. Per the McHenry County Access Ordinance, we used the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, the 11th edition, the latest edition. In there is no category of meatpacking plant. So we had to come up with an equivalent, And I discussed that with the McHenry DOT because figuring they're ultimately going to review that. So we settled that that's in the report on the light industrial category, which is basically any kind of building where people are assembling things, disassembling things, processing things. You know, people come in, they do stuff, that, you know, raw materials brought in, raw material or finished products are brought out. So based on my discussion with the Division of Transportation, we agreed on that. And for a building and the number of people of this size, we're going to only be generating about 10 cars in the morning peak hour and 7 trips in the evening peak hour. We also looked where they're coming to and from, and again, they're attracting, right now, as the site is holding a holding pen for animals today, those trucks are already on the road system going in and out of the property. So it's really just the meat packing plant that's adding traffic to the roadway system. We looked at where traffic's coming to and from, and it's going to be more or less 50-50 east-west on Nelson Road. It could be 40-60, 60-40, but you know, with these low volumes, plus or minus a car an hour is not going to make a change. So our left turn movements and right turn movements are going to be anywhere from 1 to 5 cars an hour. So well under the threshold for requiring a left turn lane or a right turn lane on Nelson Road. And again, that level of traffic is not going to have a material impact on traffic operations along Nelson Roads. And that's my report, and obviously here for questions.
If I may, Steve, is the ITE, the 11th edition, is that the most current edition?
Yes.
And do you know when that was last updated? If I told you 2021, would that be reasonable?
That sounds right, because I think the 12th edition's coming out this summer or the end of this year.
Thank you. And then, if I may, when I was reviewing the transcripts, I think there were some questions as to code and code requirements, and if I may put those to the board, my analysis on those.
Could you put the microphone closer to
I'm
you?
sorry. Usually I'm a large projector, so if I may, when I was reviewing the transcripts, there were quite a few questions that came up about the underlying uses on the property. And I have had the opportunity to discuss with staff, and maybe staff will be able to allude more to this, but it seemed like the question came up of the 24 hours, and if the petitioner would be able to comply with that. And I would just like to note that in the zoning ordinance, this property is zoned A1. And in rural county, farm animal husbandry is allowed in all agricultural districts without respect to property size or agricultural income. Animal husbandry is the raising of livestock, and that's permitted by right under the UDO. Further, in the zoning district's purpose statements in the UDO, it labels in there that agricultural zoning districts, that owners or residents of the adjoining properties may be subject to inconvenience and discomfort, the possibility of injury to property or health arising from the normal accepted agricultural practices and operations. And that's under the Illinois Right to Farm Act. And so permitted by right, the petitioners could put up a hog building or a confinement building. And so the use that they're asking to do on the further expansion with the conditional use doesn't add further odor or noise, as the testimony from the last hearing had been made. Finally, with the animals that are on site, if the way that the code reads, in my understanding, and from the indications I've received from staff, is that animals that are part of the slaughtering process have to be in and out within 24 hours. But that because of the underlying A1 zoning, that if animals are there to be grown in the purposes of agriculture, that those may remain on site. So I just wanted to make sure that that was put to the board and that staff may address that. So, and I don't have anything further at this time.
Okay, we'll take questions from the board, starting on my right. Mr. Kernick?
Just to clarify, the water well that you're proposing would be a non-potable water well? Am I correct? You said a high capacity?
No, it is not a high-capacity well.
That's not what you're going to be using? Then
Correct.
Clarify that. I'm confused.
I will clarify that. Our point was we are not a high-capacity well. We would estimate, based on our previous performance, 10,000 gallons a week. A high-capacity well would only be required if you had 100,000 gallons a day within any 24-hour period. So we do not need a high-capacity well, and in fact, this will be a 4-inch well, new well, for just the processing plant.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions regarding the traffic study. Okay. Yeah, a couple of questions regarding the traffic study. What I see here is that you looked at traffic volumes based on surveys of similar uses. What were the similar uses that what were the uses that you considered similar to slaughterhouse?
Again, like the data in the Institute of Transportation and Trip Generation Manual, light industrial, which is basically like I said, light assembly of products and processing of products. So it's so in this case, the plant employees come in, they bring the animals in, do what they do, and then at the end of the day, ship out the finished product. And that's kind of the definition of light industrial.
Okay, so
It's not most of as far as I know, all the uses in there are not meat packing plants.
okay, so I mean, you just consider this light industrial without regard to not traffic in and out, and you don't look and see whether it's comparable from a traffic perspective. You just say all light industrial, and that's what you assume this is.
No, that's not the way I went through it. Number one, we have 15 employees, so these numbers are consistent with 15 employees because they don't all come in at the same time. Second of all, the truck traffic is already there now, so we're not adding any truck traffic because the farmers are still right now bringing the animals in, and instead of trucks going in and taking the animals to the off-site plant, they're now going to be taking finished meat products off the property. So that's not going to change. And again, the McHenry, when I was asked to prepare a proposal to do this traffic study, I called the McHenry DOT because this is their road they control. And again, as I mentioned, you have an access ordinance which mandates I use ITE. And as I said, there is not an exclusive meatpacking category. And I discussed with Keith McGraw what should I use instead, and he agreed on light industrial for the reasons I mentioned.
Okay, now you mentioned that the traffic would consist of 15 employees going in and out during the workday. I assume 15 employees going in the morning, 15 employees coming out, say at 4 o'clock at the end of the shift? Correct?
Again, like most businesses, different employees come in at different times.
Well,
So any more detailed, I'd have to ask the applicant.
well, I mean, let's take an assembly plant. I mean, employees generally all come in at the beginning of the shift and all leave at the end of the shift, no?
Some do, that's correct.
I mean, some do, a lot of them do, do they not? I mean, people
Right.
punch in at the beginning of a shift, and they're expected to be there the entire shift, no?
Yes, for some processes.
So, I mean, employees at this plant don't all just trickle in during the 8-hour shift. But you're assuming they did?
Well, again, I use the number of employees, and that's what the ITE data shows, that they don't come in all at the same hour. But let's take that one a little further. Let me answer that question. So now, let's say it is 15 cars coming in the morning, 15 cars leaving in the afternoon. Again, if we split them 50-50, which obviously we can't have 7.5 cars, but one direction has 8 cars turning in and the other direction has 7 cars, that still does not warrant left turn lanes per your access ordinance requirements on Nelson Road.
Okay, I'm not addressing the requirement of turn lanes, I'm just addressing traffic in general.
Yeah.
Your site traffic volume comparison is what I'm looking at. You also talk about, you said the 30, you said, am I reading here, the proposal have minimal impact on traffic along Nelson Road with a maximum of 15 employees and about 30 vehicular visits per week, primarily farmers. So are you saying from this traffic report that you're considering traffic generated by the 15 employees plus truck traffic?
Yes, but the truck traffic is there already, so it's not, I don't have to add it, it's not additive.
Did you consider whether or not there's any semi-traffic going in and out of this facility?
Yes.
And how frequently was that?
Well, in total, again, it depends on how the farmer transports, because they can use semis. I'd have to ask my client for a more specific number, but again, it depends on delivery, so it's going to be a percentage of the pickup or deliveries.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Schnabel.
Yes, hello, everybody. I've heard several times today that this new 4-inch well for the slaughterhouse will provide non-potable water. Why is the water not considered non-potable?
So, Kurt, Mr. Schnabel, if I may, I don't recall saying that it was non-potable. What I recall saying,
Yes, you did.
that's the definition of a high-capacity well, which I asked the board to note. That non-potable well, that's a high-capacity well. We're looking for a standard 4-inch well, and that standard 4-inch well will support the proposed use. So,
Okay.
I apologize. So I did mention non-potable, but not as to this project, as to the definition of a high-capacity well in the McHenry County Health Ordinance.
Okay, well, thanks for the clarification on that. The reason that I asked the question was we had a letter of concern from someone in the area, and they stated USDA regulations require slaughterhouses using running water that meets drinking water standards.
And ours will.
That's the question that I had for right now. Thank you very much. That concludes my questioning at this time.
Thank you.
Ms. Gertner.
Thank you. I only have one question, and I'm not inferring that you weren't clear on your opening statement, but apparently there's
Apologize.
been some confusion. Now, you said something about the distinction between farm animals being there as being raised on a farm and the animals that are coming in for slaughter. I think the concern was not the animals that are living there on the farm, but the animals that are coming in for slaughter that may be there more than a 24-hour period. And I think it was of some concern whether or not that 24-hour frame could be met, because I think that it was stated in testimony at the first hearing, at the first part of this hearing, that some of the animals were there for a couple of days, maybe even 3. So if you could clarify that.
Understood. No, and when I had an opportunity to review that testimony, I didn't think that that was very clear for your board's consideration either. And that was my point in raising this distinction. Animals that come into the property and that are fed and put on feed, those are in the normal course of agricultural production.
Those we aren't even considering here in this hearing.
Correct, correct. Those animals that are coming in and slated to be processed, essentially in the site plan, there's a one-way gate. And once they have entered into those pens within the production facility, they have 24 hours to be processed.
And that is possible for this facility?
Correct. And if I may ask the petitioners, you agree that you will have anything that is slated for process be processed within 24 hours?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
And that was Mr. Olage, correct? Okay. All right. Mr. Eldridge.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, again, for the traffic engineer. The testimony is the present ADT on Nelson Road is about 1,800. Is that correct?
That's correct, the most recently available data from 2023.
And for a road the size of Nelson Road, 1,800 really isn't heavy traffic. Would you agree with that?
That is correct.
In fact, a road that size can probably handle 4 or 5 times that amount of traffic without requiring enlargement. Is that not true?
It depends on the turning movements at rush hour, but generally, yeah, a two-lane road can handle at least 10,000 cars a day.
Okay, so it's 1/5 the standard where you'd start to get interested in widening the road. Is
That's
that
correct.
And there are 15 employees, I believe you said in your testimony, and about 30 deliveries and pickups by farmers a week on the site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the 30 a week, let's say it's only 5 days a week, that would be an additional 6, so 21 total coming and going.
That's
Well,
correct.
So even if they all arrived and left at the same moment, which they will not, that still wouldn't be a burden on Nelson Road. Is that not true?
That is correct.
And I believe your study indicated that at the peak hour, which would be when most people arrived in the morning, was 10 in the morning and 7 leaving at that time in the afternoon, so that you're saying that 2/3 of the employees would be shift workers, if you will, with a couple of shift workers probably either leaving early or staying late, so they didn't leave at exactly the same time in the evening. Is that roughly what it amounts to?
I think dealing with animals, that's highly likely.
And then there would be some office workers who might have different hours, or some executive employees or salespeople who would have different hours.
Or the lucky person to do the cleanup at the end of the day.
Yeah, I imagine there is a cleanup crew that comes in, and that would affect a few cars a day and be at different times than the ordinary daily workers. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Donner?
I might have had a traffic question, but I think it's probably been answered in there somewhere. I know Bill did a fine job of asking questions. Charlie had made a good deal of understanding for me, and the gentleman who was making his testimony told me exactly what I had read and what I needed to see. So I'm going to pass this on to somebody who is more eloquent than I am.
Mr. Cozen?
Thank you for the compliment. Can I have a context of the condition of a 4-inch well, being somebody from a very urban township here in McHenry County? Is that what a residence would use? Is that
It's a standard well,
a,
4-inch well.
a standard well?
Yes.
And as well as, no pun intended, power demand or draw, depth?
Standard, and all those things will have to go through a permitting process with health department to make sure that by a certified well driller that well is deep enough. As far as electrical draw and power for the proposed project is minimal.
Thank you. In terms of the traffic, McDOT was consulted in, relative to their established statutory authority for driveway access. Is that how I understand your presentation?
Yes, like I said, when I was asked to prepare a proposal to prepare this report, the first thing I did was reach out to them, make sure I understood what they wanted and needed, and clarify a few points.
So then it is my understanding that if McDOT was confronted by any other slaughterhouse, this is the technique they would use anywhere else in which they had statutory authority?
Part of it, or the basic answer is overall yes. Essentially, look at the existing conditions, determine what the traffic is going to be generated by a particular use, and then put them together and then review the standards in terms of what roadway improvements will be needed. Obviously, this is a small, simplified location versus, something can be much bigger on a much heavily traveled road. So the details could be more, but the same process.
And so they too, as you, why did you consult with the Northwestern Traffic Institute? You said, you
No,
used
no,
it. How is that used as a reference?
No, we didn't consult with the Northwestern Traffic Institute out in Evanston. I consulted the Institute of Transportation Engineers. That's my professional organization that I belong to, and many transportation traffic engineers belong to. They assembled data in a trip generation manual, like basically surveys of all kinds of uses, from light industrial to bowling alleys to whatever. And that provides us an expectation of what a particular use generates in terms of the amount of traffic per 1,000 square feet, per employee, per residential unit. And that is what is mandated in the McHenry County Highway Access Ordinance, that when you do a traffic study, that's the reference you use.
Thank you. In terms of the distinction between livestock to be processed versus livestock which is on the property for agricultural purposes, how is the process intended to distinguish between the two?
Well,
besides being in the pen at the unfortunate direction.
Yes, but that ends up being what the deciding factor is. Those animals that are meant to be processed, that's the deciding factor, is whether they've gone through our proverbial one-way gate. And otherwise, if you're feeding animals on site, again, in the use of agricultural production. So I don't know.
Well, is there a location on the property in which those that belong there longer than 24 hours will be at that area, and those that were there, I'm sorry. No, you're good. And those that will be in the one-way gate, so that there's a distinction? Is there a point on the site plan where?
Well, I think.
Let me put it this way, in a more lighter note, a temporary guest versus permanent guest?
Understood. And I think that probably the clearest way to show you on the site plan. So the orange building in the middle. On the right-hand side, you'll see what appear to be oblong boxes. Those are pens, and those are the pens that the animals will go in, and that our proverbial one-way gate is towards the top, and it flows down towards the floor. You can see the flow from top to bottom and then to the left, right, your left. So the animals that are raised for agricultural production would be in what are currently our animal buildings, and those pens that are on the premises. And then anything that is within the proposed structure, those are the ones that are within 24 hours. And part of that reasoning is because the animals need to be inspected, either by the state or the petitioners are building this facility to the standard that it can be USDA certified, that the USDA inspector inspects those. And that's part of the reasoning why they have to be there no longer than 24 hours. It's required by our ordinance as well. But once those are inspected, they have to be processed.
And then briefly, you covered this topic you call the Right to Farming Act. Could you just expand briefly on how that applies to a zoning circumstance?
I think it does. It's called the Farm Nuisance Suit Act. It's 7040 ILCS 70. And the reason that I brought it up was that agricultural uses, the underlying agricultural uses in and of themselves, are protected under that act. And that when you move to a rural community, when you're in a agricultural area, you may be subjected to noise, odor, dust, those kinds of things, fertilizers, soil amendments, herbicides, pesticides. And those things are protected by the state. The use that's proposed by the petitioners, in fact, takes most, if not all of that away by being inside the facility, right? No additional odor, no additional noise. So, in fact, the underlying A1 uses are maybe more, as a farmer, I hate to use this word, more offensive to the neighbors than the use that is proposed.
I have no further questions.
So I would just like to clarify then, so any vehicles coming in with animals that will be processed will be pulling in that driveway and going in that driveway that's to the north of the yellow facility and unloading them into the northwest corner of the facility into the pen area?
For those animals coming in for slaughter, that is correct.
And so, so that's a totally different driveway than if there were any animals coming in for their farm purposes, would be a totally separate place
Correct.
that they would come in.
Correct. Well, separately, that those animals that are going in for feeding and agricultural production aren't going to use that north wraparound driveway around the building. Where there's an auto turn on the south side of the building, there's currently a red truck and a livestock trailer.
Yes?
Straight back, you can see, if it backs straight up where it was, there's a chute in and out of those pens for the agricultural production.
You, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
If you'd like, I can stand up and point that out to the board. Okay.
Yes, that
thank
would
you.
be helpful. Thank you.
So as Chairman Kustra had noted, if I was taking a beef in to be processed, I would pull in, pull up, back up, and unload at this gate. That animal will not.
Could you take the mic from there, please?
Thank you. This animal that I deliver will be processed within the 24 hours. It'll be inspected and then processed, comes down through, and then goes through the processing facility. If Mr. Alage had bought some feeder goats or something from me, those animals I will pull in, back up to this load chute, and then they'll go out in here, and then they'll be able to be grown in this area.
Okay.
Further questions while I'm here?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Koenig.
Well, what about animals that are raised livestock? They're ultimately going to be slaughtered there, are they not?
That would be the intention.
Okay, well,
They're not, go ahead, I'm
how
sorry.
do they get,
So those animals that would be raised here and then are ultimately going to be put through the processing plant will end up being moved up the alleyway and put in on the back side of the building here. Correct?
Correct.
And then once they enter this proverbial one-way gate, they're going to have 24 hours to make it through this process. Again, because we have to have them inspected before anything can be done with them.
Correct.
And Mr. Alage, is that correct?
Yes, also, on the animals that are gonna get processed, inspector sees it when they come in. So they take numbers, anything that goes into that gate is not coming back. It has to be processed within 24 hours. So, yes, it will be something on right that says whatever goes into that 24-hour deal is going to get processed.
If I may, if you failed to do that, is your license in jeopardy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would just like to clarify, because there is concern about these animals staying here like 3 days or something. So say he could unload these animals saying, I'm going to raise them, and 3 days later, as he could process them, then they move up and now they're a processing animal. I mean, what prevents that?
I don't think anything. While you've got them for the 3 days, you're still having to feed them, maintain them, rear them in the common course of animal husbandry and livestock rearing.
So potentially, he could unload 1,000 animals, and then over the course of 2 weeks, he could process them.
In theory, that would work. But again, the concern with the holding more than 24 hours is, have they been inspected, and are they going to make it through the processing floor?
So the only thing that refers to then is once they enter that building, they have to be slaughtered within 24 hours.
That is my understanding.
Has nothing
Correct.
to do with pens outside.
With the underlying agricultural use, correct.
Okay. Mr. Eldridge, you had another question.
Yeah, one more question for our traffic engineer. And that is, just because it hasn't been raised before, the current deeded right-of-way, is not up to McHenry County standard at the present time. Is that correct?
That's correct. And due to the change of use of the property, the ordinance, access ordinance requires then the property owner to donate the right-of-way to the county standard for that particular roadway, which for Nelson is 110 feet, 55 half right-of-way. So there's 33 and a half or 66 out there now. So they'll need, and I believe that's shown in the plans, a 22-foot dedication.
And that dedication would be made at no cost to the county. It would be effectively a gift that is as a condition of being granted the commercial entrance.
Yeah, well, actually, they make money because I think there's a fee to submit a plat to for the county review. So, but yeah, it's free.
So the Olegays aren't being paid. The county is being paid to take the
A
land.
small amount, yes.
Yes.
For the fee, for the review fee.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay, Ms. Donner, go ahead.
Finally have a question. Okay, so somebody comes with their semi, however big that semi is, an 18-wheeler, a 12-wheeler, whatever. Those animals are inspected before they come into the chute, or when they come in, they have to be inspected before they can go into the chute, no?
If I may, into the building. If those animals were all going to be processed within 24 hours,
Whatever.
yes,
Yeah,
those would be
okay,
inspected.
so those animals could have been a mile away for 3 weeks, or they could have been very close for 3 weeks, or they could have been any place for 3 weeks.
Correct.
But once they get into the building area, it has to be processed within 24 hours, and it's USDA inspected. And if they don't pass the USDA inspection, then they can lose the whole caboodle. If it's also in the pasture for 3 days and then goes into the chute or goes into the building, it still has to be the same technique of USDA inspection, and it has to be processed within 24 hours. So
Yes.
that's so, it
The only
doesn't change whether
clarification-
it's coming from next door or down the road or where it comes from. Once it hits that building, it has to be done in 24 hours.
It has to be inspected. You're
Okay?
exactly correct.
No matter where it's coming from or how it's being taken care of.
Correct.
And you're not doing chickens, you're not doing small small animals, you're doing lambs, you're doing goats. Well, they're smaller than cows, but you know what I'm saying. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear in my head, and if it was clear, not clear in somebody else's, I hope that helped. Thank you.
If I may, Ms. Donner, the only thing I've got to say is that you're exactly correct. Where you say USDA, I would have the state of Illinois.
Okay,
Or USDA. Currently, their operation is state of Illinois inspected.
Okay.
They're building with the aspiration of being USDA inspected.
Okay.
The difference between the inspection is whether you can sell it over state lines or not.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
No other questions by the board? Staff have questions?
No questions at this time.
Okay, so at this time, if any member of the public has a question, it has to be only regarding what was testified to today. There were other things testified to at the previous hearing. Those have all been asked. But the new testimony, excuse me, you had the opportunity to ask questions at the last hearing. Okay. Forgive me, then let me clarify with Anna. So were the only questions asked by Heartland Township?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that, my mistake. So at this time, anyone who would like to ask a question regarding any of the testimony for this petition will be allowed to do so. You will each have 3 minutes. If after your 3 minutes, if you have other questions, pass it along to someone else. And I ask you not to be repetitive. If somebody's asked the same question, go on to something else. And you will need to give your name and your address, and then you'll have your 3 minutes. You'll come up here to the microphone, and so that we can get this all on the record. And I apologize for my mistake there. So anybody that would like to speak? Okay, please. I'll use my phone for a timer.
Good afternoon. My name is Cindy Skurkrud. I live at 4209 West Solon Road in Solon Mills. I'm the Vice President of the Nippersink Watershed Association and Chair of the Water and Natural Resources Protection Action Team of the Environmental Defenders of McHenry County. I'm sorry to hear of the fire at your Harvard facility. The major concern of the organizations I represent is how waste and wastewater is to be handled so as to not pollute groundwater and Slough Creek. I have an idea of this from today's discussion of water usage, but I have some clarifying questions. First, do you want me to go through my questions and then they can answer them?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Okay, so my questions
take
are,
notes.
am I correct in saying that all the wastewater from the slaughterhouse, from the animal slaughter and slaughterhouse cleaning will be stored in tanks? So second question, so does that mean no processed wastewater go outside the building at all? How long is the wastewater to be stored, and how often is the wastewater picked up? And then where does it go? And then, so what wastewater from the site will be going to the site's septic field? And then the last was just a clarifying question. In today's testimony of Mr. Wilkie and Mrs. Olage, you said 16.8, but you did not give any units, so can you repeat that again with the units? Thank you.
Sure, and I appreciate it. So you're correct. The wastewater from the animal processing goes into a storage tank. Those tanks are then pumped out weekly and picked up by Collins. Right now, our client uses Collins Sanitary out of Clinton, Wisconsin. That wastewater is then, they take it away and they do whatever they need to do with the product to dispose of it properly. As far as there is, and I might defer to Dave Gillespie, our architect, what things go into the septic system for the building?
The only thing going into the
Please
septic,
identify.
Dave Gillespie, architect. The only thing going into the septic system is it's the sanitary from 2 single-user washrooms and then the kitchen sink and the break room, and that's it.
But everything from the processing facility will go into the holding tanks to be pumped out and removed by Collins weekly. Septic. Sorry. And then your last question, if you could repeat it, it was a clarification of something that I had said. 16.8 gallons. Oh, it's gallons. I'm sorry. 16.8 gallons. 16.28. Per animal.
Per animal.
So, and that's based on what leaves the property.
Okay, okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
So before I ask this question, or if somebody asks a question, I have a follow-up to that then. So you said that the weekly usage of water would be about 10,000 gallons.
Correct.
So there's a holding tank for 10,000 gallons?
Correct.
Okay, all right. All right, who else would like to ask a question?
Amy Newman, 14824 Redbud Lane, Woodstock. So you're talking about a current processing plant. Where is that plant, and how large of a capacity is that plant? How many animals does it hold?
So, yeah, I guess I'd ask for clarification on the question. So, the Alages had the prior processing plant in Chemung, or Lawrence, Illinois, in Harvard.
So it's not a current plant then?
Correct.
It's not operating currently?
Correct.
It shut down when?
Can we take one
March
this
of
microphone,
2023.
please?
Okay, so we're talking about a couple of years ago that they're talking about the usage of the water and everything else.
Correct.
No, he's saying no.
Well, so, based on the Collins sanitary that's been removed, right now, our clients have essentially a barber's chair at an existing facility, and they process some of their own.
So a very small
there.
facility. How large is the facility? How big is it?
I would say it's about Eduardo Lage. I would say about half, probably half of what this, of this. What
Square
we're proposing.
footage?
I do not have that answer. I
Okay.
don't have that answer.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Isla Anderlich. I live at 310 North Rose Farm Road. I have a couple questions. You're saying that once those animals pass through the one-way gate, they will be processed within 24 hours, which is compliant with the standards outlined regarding plots zoned as A2. However, you are deliberately avoiding the discussion of how long animals not within those gates will be present on the remaining property, which I will remind you is seeking an A2 zoning permit for the entirety of the plot. Can you clarify how long the animals on the remaining property not within the processing plant will remain on the property as the entire plot is set to be zoned A2? By locating a slaughterhouse next to a nursing home mentioned, does that not violate McHenry County Ordinance 4 of violating the satisfaction of those housed within the vicinity via the nursing home mentioned by the architect of the suspect parcel? To follow up, Mr. Alake, you mentioned that you personally do not own the equipment to disperse the manure. However, how can you ensure that the manure doesn't build up or contribute to the smell, which impacts the satisfaction of those housed in the vicinity? In the last meeting, the chair asked you outright, Mr. Alake, about the regulations that state how much square footage each animal is mandated to have in the pens you plan to place the livestock in, and you were unable to provide an answer. All you were able to provide was that the animals in the pens would be provided water and feed, but you never specified that they will be provided the mandated amount of humane space within the pens. Can you clarify your answer and ensure that your livestock is being provided with ethical, humane treatment from the beginning to the end of the slaughter process? Thank you.
Just as a note, The petitioner is not requesting an A2 zoning on the property. We're requesting an A1 conditional use.
A2 to A1, which requires you have, or did you update it from the last meeting?
It never has been. It's an A1 to an A1C conditional
Okay,
use.
so, but does it not state that you only have 24 hours on the property to keep the animals?
It does, and
So
I
for the
think
entirety of the property, you're asking for an A1C zoning, pardon saying A2?
Correct. So we're
Okay.
asking for an A1 conditional use to use the property for a food processing plant with animal slaughter.
So the
The-
entire property requires that they be processed within 24 hours, yes or no?
No.
Okay.
Is a short answer. As far as the treatment of the animals, all the animals are inspected by either the state or the USDA inspector, and that also consists of space and treatment in the holding pens.
And can you discuss the nursing home based on Article 4?
I believe that there's testimony that we can go with it, but it is compliant with the conditional use standards.
But specifically, the article says that it has to do with the satisfaction of those housed within the area. Have you talked to every member within the area about their satisfaction?
No, we have not talked to every
And can
member.
you address how the manure removal will be taken care of?
The manure that is within the facility will be washed out of the facility and be carted off, as we just talked about, by Collins Sanitary. It goes into that holding tank. As far as the animals that are left on the property for agricultural production, they'll be, the manure will be handled in a way that is agriculturally accepted and spread.
But possibly it might impact the satisfaction of those housed within the area.
And again, as we talked about with the Farming Nuisance Act, that is something to be expected in
But
in
it
rural
still
communities.
does violate other regulations of county.
I would disagree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? Yes, sir.
My name is Larry Sepka, 2312 Murray Road. My wife and I own the 2 parcels directly east of the subject property. My question is for Mr. Gillespie. You spoke of noise last time being animals, traffic, and people. Can you touch on the refrigeration units that are going to be installed on that piece of property that you are developing? Are these going to be commercial refrigeration units?
Thank you, Larry. You're absolutely correct, and this is Dave Gillespie, Gillespie Design Group. You're absolutely correct. There are mechanical, electrical, and even plumbing noises associated with the normal building that will accompany this building. What would you like to know about those?
Where will these units be installed at?
What you're referring to is there's going to be some condensers for the refrigeration, and I'm sure it'll be in the back part of a building somewhere.
Are they up on the roof?
No, they're not going to be on the roof.
How many are we talking about?
You know what? When we design the building, I'd like to show it to you.
I'd like to hear it before.
We're at a point of conditional use here,
Exactly.
and if we go ahead, we'll get this building designed very similar to that footprint, and I'll show you the refrigeration plans.
These refrigeration units will be running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yes, they will.
They never shut down. Meat's got to stay cold. We all understand that. How far is this noise going to travel?
Yeah.
That answer,
Introduce
I
yourself,
don't know. Tyler Wilkie on behalf of the petitioners. But the intention is to put them behind the building, the refrigeration units, to try and stop that noise pollution that you're referring to any of the surrounding neighbors.
But there is no guarantee that the neighbors sitting out on a summer day are going to hear these refrigeration compressors running 24 hours a day. They can't sit in their backyard. They can't open their windows. It's very quiet out in the country in the summertime,
Yeah,
I guarantee you that.
I guess the best I can do is a comparison of other refrigeration units in the area here, and I don't know how to compare it at the moment. We'll do the best we can to try to muffle the sound of that. I'm sure there's refrigeration units at Vortec, at Valley High, at McHenry Dot, and so on, at Heartland Township probably. And I don't know, if you hear some of those, you'll probably hear this too.
So you do realize that McHenry County has a nuisance noise ordinance that
Yes,
slaughterhouses are not exempt from?
right, yes.
Cannot be heard 100 feet from the property line?
I'm not familiar with that. Is it 100 feet from the
Your
property
time
line?
is up, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Megan Burns. I live at 14821 Redbud Lane. My question is really more about safety. In March of 2023, Olagi's facility near Harvard caught fire. It caused nearly $1 million in damage, destroyed multiple buildings, and used 260,000 gallons of water to extinguish. Multiple fire departments were called, and the water had to be shuttled in due to the hydrants not being in the area, which is certainly a scenario that could play out in this area as well. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated case. There were fires
You
at...
have to ask a question, ma'am. You
Yep.
can't just give a statement.
No, there's definitely a question. There was a fire at Deli Star in Fayetteville, Illinois, Smithfield Foods in Mammoth, Wisconsin River Meats, and Newlywed Foods in Chicago. These incidents show a clear pattern of meat processing and slaughterhouse operations, recurring and real risks of fire. My question is, how are we able to handle such an emergency with this food processing plant?
So the new this is a new structure. The old Jones Pack was a building from the 1950s. And this new structure is going to be built to new building standards and codes. And those things will be built in such a way as to deter those risks of having a fire. And obviously the petitioner wishes not to have a fire. And in fact, they tried to rebuild at that site and couldn't. So the petitioner is going to go out of their way to make sure that the site is built in a way that it's not going to have an accident by fire.
Hydrants in the area? Anything to help so that if other community member, someone has a car accident or a fire or a medical emergency at Valley High, all of the medical personnel is not going to be working on the industrial but helping residents? Will hydrants be in place as a precaution?
This is served by rural water, rural wells. There are no hydrants. There is no water line.
That 4-inch well?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Michael Hoff. I live at 15817 Nelson Road. Could you put the overhead view with the circle up again? And my question for the traffic study, did you visit the site for the traffic study?
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, because my property is located right here. And you can see all these properties in what we call Heartland are very close to Nelson Road. So any additional traffic that you add to that facility is going to take away from the property values in that area. Because
A question.
1,800
You have to
cars,
ask a
I don't know
question.
where you get the 1,800 cars from because I'm right here and there's not 1,800 cars going there. You add 20 cars to that and you're going to decrease everybody's property value because like my house.
What's your question for him, sir? You can
Well, I
add a
asked him a
statement
question when
later.
I came up here. I'm not allowed to,
Well, you have to let him answer it then.
he did.
So do you have another question?
No.
Okay.
Okay, the 1,800 is from, I believe it's from the county source, and that's per day, so that's the two-way traffic over a 24-hour period. That's why when you don't, when you stand out there, you don't see 1,800 cars in an hour. It's 1,800 a day. And the additional traffic that we're going to see is going to be primarily auto-based or pickup trucks. Since, again, the trucks that are already visiting that site today are already out there.
So you don't think increased traffic going down this section of road is going to affect property values at all?
Not at 5 cars an hour, no.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. If you think you want to ask a question, if you want to kind of line up by the wall, then we'll save a little bit of time. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, my name is Nick Jacob, 14815 Lilac Lane in Woodstock. And I have several questions. I don't expect answers at this moment because I see multiple problems with math problems going on here. It's talking about the water.
You can talk about those things later, but you can ask questions right
The
now.
questions are coming up.
Okay.
First, talking about the water. The answer was 4.2 gallons per animal and 100 gallons to wash the process down at the end. And then there's only 14 gallons hauled off the property. And then there was another figure of 16 gallons. How do you figure this math? And also, where are the holding tanks? There's no holding tanks pictured in this. As far as the air conditioning, how many tons of air conditioning? I'm sure an architect can plan forward a little bit and say, with this kind of refrigeration of this size, it'll be this many tons, and that's how air conditioning is measured. Last one is for you, sir, with the traffic study. You did state no additional truck traffic beyond what is currently in and out of that property? Do you know that, what was the statement about how many animals? Between 300, 400, or 500 animals a week? Is that correct? Are they walking there one by one, like going to the Ark? How many animals are on, whether it's a semi or whether it's a fifth wheel, how many animals are on a vehicle? Just a guesstimate. Does anybody have an answer?
Sure. Let me start first with the water. Tyler Wilkie on behalf of the petitioners. If the 4.25 was the water used to clean the carcasses during the inspection period. The 100 gallons at the end of the year, or end of the day, was for washing down the facility. So, but those numbers, they give us math that we can add up. But the best way to do it, and to be the most liberal with that number, is everything we haul off the site. So,
Which was stated at 14 gallons.
it's 16.8.
Now it's 16, okay. But you got 100 gallons to wash the building down. You got 4.2 or 4.25 gallons to wash an animal. How many animals a day?
Well, and that's why it's per animal. And based on the math, if we did the high end 500, as we discussed, I rounded up to 20 gallons an animal, right? But again, that 16.8, we're also including animal liquids and anything else that's washed out down the drain into the tanks. Gives us 10,000 gallons a week of consumption.
And wasn't a statement made that 14 or 16 is hauled off?
Correct.
Where's the rest of it going? Is it running into the creek?
No.
Slough Creek?
It's all contained.
Where are the tanks? The tanks should be pictured. Go back to the close-up.
No, the Dave Gillespie, yeah, the tanks aren't shown on the site plan.
Why?
Right, because this is a preliminary site plan meant to obtain a conditional use.
I'm sorry, that doesn't fly.
There are
with me.
3 tanks at the Jones packing plant right now just for this purpose. There's nothing that leaves the floor of the manufacturing process that ends up in the soil. Yes, we are.
You are, so everybody.
They'll be in the front of the building below grade, yes.
Oh, below grade. So there's a little bit more information that we could all appreciate.
No, that's what we're talking about, underground tanks. And very similar to Jones Packing.
Okay. Well, then I'll move on to the traffic study. There's no additional traffic, no additional trucks. I'm not worried about people working there. You know, that's us driving past there. The trucks, how many, and plus the product, are you aware that the product is going to be bought outside of McHenry County and distributed outside of McHenry County. So how many semis, how many fifth wheels will you expect?
Again, my understanding, and our client can help, is, again, they're basically keeping their operation the same. They're bringing the same amount of animals that they're bringing on the property now.
No.
And then hauling them off onto
There are no 300 to 500 animals going on that property now. There are no animals going, I mean, there are what, maybe a couple dozen? Are there animals going on there right now?
There are animals there now, yes.
What kind of number?
Varies from 100 to 200, depends. 100 to 200, 300, whatever.
Well, that's amazing
it's
to me,
between
because
100 and
I
300.
drive by there all the time, and I see the dozen or
Sir,
two.
your time is up. You have to answer the question, but then no more questions can be answered. Or asked, I'm sorry.
Yeah, when animals come into the, Eduardo, when animals come into the property, just like anywhere else, you have a trailer where you can put in 50, 60 goats, lambs in one trailer.
I realize
So one trailer is going to come in. It's not 50 trailers. Does that answer your
No,
question?
I realize that.
Yeah.
So it's 50, but.
No more questions. Just let him answer.
Oh, so, wait, so you use my 3 minutes for them to answer the question?
It's 3 minutes total, and then if you're not done, then the next person can ask
Okay,
questions.
I see.
And please be respectful. I mean, everybody's wanting to do their best here. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Paula Widener at 19888 McGuire Road. I'm a Heartland Township trustee. And a couple questions I had were, number one, at the last meeting, you stated that there would only be processed roughly 300 animals a week. Today, I'm hearing 500 max. The other question I had, if you look at the map of your property, what is to prevent him from saying he purchased over his limit for these holding pens for 24 hours? What's going to prevent him from backing in here and putting him in these pens until he gets this cleared out? That is a concern of mine, because then you are mixing your animals with what you've purchased. And even though they get inspected, do they not get inspected until they're killed? They don't get inspected as soon as they get off the truck. They're inspected as they go on the floor. Am I right?
So, first, when I had reviewed the testimony before today, there were a lot of numbers thrown around as the number of livestock in there. The reason that I'm using 500 was that was what I saw as the top end of the testimony, all the testimony from the
Okay.
last hearing, and based our water usage on that,
Okay.
right? To try and give us the high-end delta,
Okay.
right? This is the water usage that
Okay.
max we could see. That doesn't mean that we're processing 500 a week, and probably closer to that three to four number. As far as your question regarding inspection, that's correct. If animals come in and are put into the livestock agricultural production pens, they're not inspected at that point, and they would be intermixed with the herd. And just like any farm, they're not necessarily all thrown in the same pen. You may have a separate pen that you throw new livestock in rather than old livestock, just for concern of somebody catching a cold or sickness between animals and pens. But anything that does come in to get slaughtered gets inspected once it's inside the processing facility.
Right, but then you're saying now that there's going to be another holding pen? Where? If you have two trucks sitting here, you're going to hold, let's say, 100 goats on a semi while this one's being processed out?
No, and that's going to be the limitation on the per week, is how many can go through and stay in the holding pens and meet the inspection there, and how timely they can be processed through the facility.
Okay, and currently I understand there are trucks coming in and out of his property with animals now. Are they being processed in 24 hours? And should they be there because he is not permitted to slaughter animals?
So those animals are not being processed on the subject property.
Okay,
So their animals are coming in, they're being fed for however long they need to be fed out, and then they're being hauled off to another processing facility right now. This, over time, will streamline that. And as far as animals then leaving the property, once they're fed, they can go into the facility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Al Wilson, 14609 Honeysuckle Lane. The animal material that goes into the holding tanks, I assume that smells. How often do you expect your tanks to be pumped?
Once a week.
Okay. I was at a facility a couple weeks ago. They have 2 tanks. They pump them weekly, and it smells. Even though they have holding tanks, it smells. Okay.
So if I may, there's 2 parts to this. So all the liquid material will go in those holding tanks that are underground, and they'll get pumped once a week. The other smell that you may have encountered are the offals, the hides and everything like that. This facility is being built with a separate refrigerated room that all those items go into in order to keep that smell down, and then they're picked up. Those are picked up daily and removed from the site from a renderer. So we have liquid waste product, and we have dry waste product, and that's how they're going to be treated separately.
Who decides when they're to be pumped?
They get on a rotation with the sanitary company, but it is customary in the business that if for some reason you have to be pumped more often, you make the phone call.
I mean, do they get pumped when they're full?
No, not necessarily. We don't ever want them to be full.
Okay. How many days a week are you planning on being open?
5 days a week.
Okay. So 5 days a week, you're probably going to go 60 to 80 animals a day?
And, I'm sorry.
So
Okay, so they'll be operating 6 days a week, but only processing 5, because that's when you can get the inspector, if that makes sense.
So with 5 days a week, you're anywhere from 60 to 80 animals processed a day?
That's accurate.
Assuming the 300 to 400 per week?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
So there is an inspector there on site those 5 days?
Yes.
If an animal comes in at 7 o'clock at night,
So that's where the 24 hours comes in?
so by the next night at 7 o'clock, that animal's going to be processed?
Yes, and that's why we make sure to schedule out those appointment dates.
Okay. The manure that's on the site now, or has been, where they're storing animals, what happens to that?
That gets spread on the hayfield on the north end of the existing site.
Has the owner ever had complaints with smell of the manure on that site?
You have somebody else you can
I'm
give the
sorry,
rest of your
I'll
questions to.
finish your question. Have we had any complaints regarding the manure on this site?
Can you,
We've never had any sort of written notification of an issue with the manure. And I would just like to harken back to the Illinois Farm Nuisance Act, that it's in the normal course of agriculture and is to be expected in a rural agricultural area, the spreading of manure.
if
Can
you
I-
have more questions, if you can pass them on to somebody else who could ask them for you, that would be great. Okay, next person.
We can deal with that.
I'm Dennis Brightwell. I live at 310 North Rose Farm Road in Woodstock. At the last meeting, I may have misunderstood this. Is there anybody on the board who has any kind of family relationship with the Olagis? Son-in-law, daughter-in-law, something like that?
Nobody on this board, and actually your questions are for the petitioner now.
Oh, okay, Mr. Olagi. Are you related in any kind of way through a marriage or other way to somebody on the board?
No, sir.
All right, well, I misunderstood that from last time because I thought somebody said yes. let's see here. The other thing I'm not sure about is, which I now have lost here. Oh, if the residents are within the area that they are saying that, if there are residents within the area that are saying this proposed ban is unsatisfactory, does that not violate County Ordinance Number 4 of violating the satisfaction of those housed within the facility? So that would be applying to, I think, Valley High. So do we know if they know about this and have they objected?
As a petitioners, we've received no objection from anyone who resides.
Have you
in Valley High.
notified them that there's going to be a slaughterhouse potentially built?
We have notified everyone that was required under the UDO ordinance.
Okay.
Hi, I'm John Barger. I live at 14616 Honeysuckle Lane here in Heartland Township. And I want to review some of the testimony from the last meeting we had here. It said, under the standards for conditional use permit, line number 9 states the conditional use is reasonably in the interest of public welfare. The petitioner's testimony states on page 39 of the appeals hearing that the majority of his purchases are made at out-of-state auctions, and the majority of his sales are in restaurants to patrons in Chicago. This contradicts the response given on the staff report, big idea number 2, that states.
That's a comment, sir, that you'll
There'll
have
be a question at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll phrase it as a question. Contradicts, given on the staff report, big idea number 2, the proposed use of the slaughterhouse depends upon local livestock. In the petitioner's testimony, he stated there was very little local livestock that is being purchased or sold at this facility. I don't see how this helps our local economy or residents. We're having the burden of the declining property values, health concerns, groundwater issues, wastewater issues, noise, odors, and increased traffic. Finally, Heartland Township's natural resources are being used to support a commercial slaughterhouse operation, while the residents of Heartland Township will receive no benefit from the commercial slaughterhouse being located here. To the petitioner and his representation, can you explain how I'm wrong on that? Or tell me, how does it help us as residents of Heartland Township?
Sure, I'd be happy to. First, the animals that are coming in, some of them may be coming from out of state. As a local agricultural producer, there's not a lot of commercial sheep and goats that are raised in McHenry County. Those that are, the Alages have had the opportunity to buy those from local producers, but there's not enough to meet the demand. We talked about how you talked about how the demand for the product may come from out of county. At the end of the day, that money is then being pulled back into the county and then being reinvested within the county, within Heartland Township, on a project and a building on property that's owned by McHenry County residents in Heartland Township. And as far as the big idea too, supporting local agriculture, as an agricultural producer, I either have to go out of state or over an hour and a half away to get processing done right now. Previous to that, I had the opportunity to work with the Olages on some of my cattle alone, but there's no other option in McHenry County for a processing plant. And if the plant was there, their business model, as I've talked about with the petitioners, may change to doing more local cattle and
Sure.
animals that are grown.
And then one other question before I run out of time. I was under the understanding that the,
Thank you.
Next person.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Porup. I live at 18803 Dunham Road, Woodstock. I have several questions. One, why
Sir,
does he want to locate?
Sir, in the background, no talking. We got to be able to hear the person who's at the mic.
Why does he want to locate in McHenry County if the animals are not raised here and most of them are going out of the county? Why doesn't he find another location to build his facility where he doesn't have to haul them in and he doesn't have to haul it out? The second one, the county, you asked for a water study. I would like to know what the petitioner's qualifications are that she gave as far as Did she satisfy your questions? I would think it would, she's kind of partial. I would think it should be an outside source that would come in with a water study to tell us how much water they're going to be using, not just what they say and everything else involved. I think it's kind of a conflict of interest if you're accepting her testimony as far as the water study when that's what you called for at the last meeting.
First, regarding the water study, I think that we've met the standards for the approval for the conditional use. One of those approvals is that we have to get approvals and permits from the health department on our final as-built plan. So accordingly, whatever that consumption, should they require further investigation, we're going to have to do that in order to require the permit. Regarding the question about being built in McHenry County, I defer to Mr. Olage.
Go on.
Eduardo. Yes, one of the reasons why I have to go out of the county to buy my livestock is because there's not enough of sheep and goats are being raised in McHenry County. Now, I grew up in Crystal Lake. I went to Crystal Lake South High School. I went to MCC. I've been in Crystal Lake, McHenry County for all my life. I run different businesses through my life, and one of the main ideas and things that I do and that I always done is that I go and I push myself and my family outside of McHenry County to bring product, sell product, then bring my money invested in McHenry County with my properties, purchasing products, Menards, Farm and Fleet, Tractor Supply. I don't go out of the county to buy any of my farming parts. I get it from McHenry County. I invest my money in McHenry County. So yes, I have to go out of McHenry County because they don't have enough livestock for me to produce my demand. That's why. But I've been here in McHenry County all my life. Me and my wife, my kids are here. They're planning to do the same thing. We're planning to keep working, helping McHenry County with our taxpayers and everything, just like everybody else, but we're planning to do the same thing. We've been doing that since I was 15 years old, I believe.
Okay, your time is up. Next.
Name is Richard Hilton. Address is 3237 East Lake Shore Drive in Wonder Lake. Representing this Nippersink Watershed Association. I'm secretary of that organization. And I believe you stated that your holding tanks would be underground. And can you tell me for sure that you are going to have some sort of a leak detection device to protect against any leakage of that waste as it is accumulated in the tanks?
If I may, I know that we have an alarm system on those tanks so that they don't overflow. And based on the use, we're going to know. But again, those tanks are going to have to be approved by the health department in our permitting stage.
Gas stations have the same problem as you will probably have the same problem gas stations have, and I'm hoping that you will be able to install some sort of a leak detection service so that the groundwater is protected.
Understood. Thank you.
Steve Kudel, 101 Van Buren Street, Woodstock, Illinois. I'm just going to go back to this 24-hour rule, and I want to ask Mr. Alago a couple of questions. At the January 30th hearing, there was a extensive exchange between the chairperson and yourself regarding the 24-hour rule. And at one point, the chairperson asked, "Are you willing to comply with that?" meaning the 24-hour rule. And your response was, "I don't think it's an issue for me. I can arrange that. I don't think it's a problem. If it's not going to work, the fact that I raise my animals and I do crop in the back of the property, then it's not going to work. Then I will comply for it, That's not a problem." So my question is, what's changed between January 30th, and it's not, I'm not asking Mr. Wilkie, I'm asking Mr. Alago, what's changed between January 30th, when you said you could comply with the 24-hour rule, and this afternoon, where apparently you're telling us that you can't comply, or you don't want to comply with it?
It's the interpretation of the ordinance from the county.
So just say that?
Yeah.
I think I asked the question, Mr. Alago, not Mr. Wilkie.
Well, and I think there was a lot of confusion at the last meeting on what the ordinance requires or allows for. And
I don't think there was confusion. There might have been confusion on Mr. Alago's part, but I don't think there was confusion on the part of the board.
As far as the underlying A1 uses versus the A1C uses. And I think that's what we had clarification here from staff. I think that question is better from staff. What you
No, I would just
indicated-
no, Tyler, I didn't ask you a question.
Sorry.
I asked Mr. Alago, what is the difference between January 30th, when he said he could comply with the 24-hour rule, and March 27th, where apparently he can't comply with it?
Well, of my understanding, on that day, there was a confusion between, like my attorney said, it was a confusion between, we were not sure where we're gonna keep them there. Basically, what I was trying to explain on that day is basically what we explained today, that on the plan for the harvesting of the animals, it has a holding pen specifically for those 24 hours. Now, the rest of it is what I was talking about, because I was trying to figure it out, what the rest of my animals, I mean, how can, you know, and the question is, and we asked the question to McHenry County, so they answer it. So
I think their answer was number 2 of section 8H of the zoning ordinance specifically states live animals may be held on the site for no more than 24 hours. That's all it says. There's no distinction for animals that are inside the facility or animals that are inside or outside in a feeding pen. Is that correct? Would you, Tyler, I asked you that. Would you agree that's what the zoning ordinance states?
That's for the principal use of.
Doesn't say
of
principal
food-
use.
It does, for food slaughter with, but if you look at HH, it's for food processing with animal slaughter.
That's correct.
And that's the conditional use. So for that conditional use purpose, those animals can be on the property for no longer than 24 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. For
Hey,
slaughter.
next.
Paul Lohmeyer, 740 Lisa Street in Woodstock. My family has been a longtime neighboring farm of this facility or spot, and we are also former owners of this whole particular piece of property. In this process, do they have to study any sort of environmental impact from surface runoff, from putting the buildings in place, how it changes the rainfall, if there's going to be manure contamination? Because that spot's the high point of the property, and we have the ditch, which is our property line to the north. There's a wetland, and then there's residential wells surrounding it. Can that be ensured that those wells won't be somehow affected by this?
Yes, and the answer would be that we are going to have to apply for, in the building process, a stormwater management permit and be compliant with the stormwater management ordinance to control any increased runoff.
Shouldn't that have been done before all this started?
No, and the reason is the conditional use process is just to approve the use. Even if you get through the use process and the county board and the zoning board of appeals say that, yes, we agree that this use can be done on the property, that doesn't mean it will be done on the property, because you still have to meet all the requirements per the building ordinance, for the stormwater ordinance, for the health department ordinance, and McHenry County DOT.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Hunter. I live at 15318 St. Patrick Road. And my family has lived in Heartland for 78 years. And it's been an amazing place of safety, friendliness, a great community. And so I have a couple of questions to ask Mr. Alagu, not his lawyer. The animals arriving and unloading will not be silent inside the building. They will be screaming, bellowing, baaing, in a way that is not typical of animals on a farm. Everyone who hears that in the area will know that is the sound of death. This different sound is not the sound expected by the Family Nuisance Act. It's not part of the Farming Nuisance Act. This will affect neighborhood satisfaction. So my questions are, have you done a study examining neighborhood satisfaction, having a slaughterhouse across from Valley High, sir?
No.
Have you done a study examining the impact of this slaughterhouse on the community reputation of Heartland, sir?
No, I have not.
Have you done a study examining the impact of the slaughterhouse on neighborhood property values?
No, I have not.
What happens when diseased animals arrive, cause contagious diseases that can affect our community, sir? Will you be responsible for people who become ill?
No, how is that possible, though?
I think when you see
I mean,
the
there's-
bovine illnesses, when you see the bird flu, it occurs in slaughterhouses. So I think you might want to think about that possibility.
No, I can tell you, any animals that come, wherever I buy them from, they're inspected by a veterinary, a vet. Wherever I buy them, they get inspected, 1. 2, when they come into the facilities where we process our animals, they get inspected by a state
Okay, so I don't want to run out of time, but I just want to say, I don't think that you're so much different than like Smithfield and all these billionaire processing plants who can't avoid this problem.
Common.
What are the hours of these operations? You've stated the days, what are the hours?
We say 7 to 4. Monday through Friday, Saturday, it's just a pickup day for customers to come and process their animals with us.
So there won't be any semis arriving with screaming animals at midnight, but there will be maybe on Saturday when people are out trying to have picnics?
I think we qualify as a farmer, as a farmland, we qualify to bring any kind of livestock truck in our property
Thank
at
you.
any time.
Hi, Brian Sass, 14821 Red Bud Lane, Woodstock, Illinois. Whereas this type of processing plant is typical for an industrial area, I was just wondering why you chose an area that's not zoned for industrial, whereas, there's so many sites in McHenry County that are more suitable for this.
Well, I think Mr. Alage responded to this in the previous testimony a month ago, but he owns this existing A1 site. And to say that an industrial zone is necessarily a better zone than this, I don't think it's fair based on the UDO. The UDO says that it's permitted by right in an I1, I2 zone, but it's a conditional use if you can meet the conditional use standards in an A1 zone. Whether you're in an I1, I2, or an A1C, you have the same requirements under 1656 HH. And I think that the site meets those requirements.
So something that's more industrial, a site that's deemed industrial, would actually wouldn't it make more sense? I mean, it does for our community. I mean, because we're not an industrial community.
There's factors there.
So I don't know that, two parts of that question. I don't know that this site doesn't meet that. If there was something that, under the UDO, that was permitted in industrial that's not permitted in an A1C, then those uses, industrial uses, would be better off in an industrial zone. But to say that Heartland doesn't necessarily have industrial uses, I think ignores some of the surrounding neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Faye Wilson, 14609 Honeysuckle Lane, Woodstock. At the first meeting, one of the questions that was posed was about your knowledge of about how much this facility is going to cost, what the investment of it was going to be. And it seemed there was a lot of, or there was only assumptions as to how it was going to come about, financing, things like that. So I felt like there really wasn't a business plan in place. I'm wondering if there is a better plan in place, if you've locked that down a little bit more.
I'd be happy to answer this question. I don't know that it's necessarily relevant to the use, but we did hear this question and we put the pencil to it. Based on the investment that is going to be made, you're looking at a $1.5 to $2 million investment that's going to be made in the property. That's not necessarily all in the building, but by the time you add in fixtures, furniture, and equipment, you're looking at a very sizable investment into the community.
Is there any tentative plans for the building itself, the design of the building? Obviously, you're talking about the tanks and the chutes and so on.
At the end of the day, the structure is going to look like a pole shed, a steel pole shed is our goal. And of course, that's all got to go through planning and development and get building permits for the same. But they want it to fit in with that landscape and of that agricultural use.
Okay. Obviously, our concern as neighbors there is about the noise, the sound, the smell, and everything. So there was, from the first transcript, it was told that the building is an enclosed building that won't let sound, noise, or odor escape. So wondering if there is a building design that can actually pull off that miracle of not having that, like no smell is going to come out of that building and affect the neighbors.
Dave, do you want to talk about the insulation? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Dave Gillespie. I'm the architect. So what you're referring to are the building noises. What I was referring to in that first testimony, if you take it in context, was the sounds of animals and, as somebody just mentioned, baying, bellowing, and so on. That all is contained inside the building. What would you like to know about the building?
Well, how that can be guaranteed that all of that is kept in one building. I grew up on a farm myself, and even if you shut all the windows and doors on a barn, it still stinks.
We're using
outside.
6-inch insulated metal panel walls that have an R value of 60 and a pretty high STC rating. So I don't know how this is relevant to the discussion, but we're trying to do our best to make it as soundproof as possible. And after thinking about the question about air conditioning, I'd like to look into that further too, because we don't want any sound to escape the building, and I'd like to explore putting that inside the building as well. The condensers and the evaporators. The evaporators will be inside in any case.
All right, one last question regarding the, okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Next person.
Kristen Sepka, 2312 Murray Road, Woodstock. In today's testimony, you stated that the facility will use 100 gallons to power wash the building once per day. In previous testimony, you stated that the building was washed down 3 times per day. How many times will you be washing down your building?
Once.
So
At
when
the
you
end of the
stated in
day,
January,
most of the time it would be at the end of the day.
okay, so you're not washing it down 3 times, so your water estimate is accurate?
No, unless product gets changed, but most of the time, that's all included on our testimony about what we did at Jones, yes.
But you previously stated it was 3 times per day at Jones. So I just want to clarify for
I
the
don't
water
recall
study.
that, but if it gets done, it gets done just when you switch type of animal. So if you do lamb in the morning, and let's say you wanted to do beef after 12 o'clock, it needs a rinsing, but it's not a total wash. But that's, in our numbers, with Collins Sanitary, that's all in there. That's why we come up with those numbers that we gave you today.
Next question, government and industry data, one source being Texas A&M University, shows that sheep and goats require 28.5 gallons of water per animal for slaughter. You're telling me you're going to use half of the industry standard per animal?
Very PG.
Yes, I guess all depends, Eduardo, it all depends on the methods that you have to process or clean a carcass, okay? All matters. Big factories, big slaughterhouses, they got a line set up where there's stations. The way I do it is more of a local or a less time-consuming, where if you do manually, there's going to be more of a like chance that it's going to get the carcass a little, it needs more water to it. If you do it like the way I want to do it, also it has to be done with my architect, is that there is a machine specifically that will clean them for you, and will be less water that can be used. So I guess it all depends how you process your cleanup.
In the previous hearing, Mr. Schnabel stated we've been in a severe drought for 3 years. I'm estimating that the water you use will be equivalent to 7 homes in Heartland Township. Do you anticipate your operation will impact the availability of water for our local residents?
No.
Okay. And in today's testimony, you stated that your existing operation will remain with the animals you have currently in the holding pens. In previous testimony, Mr. Gillespie stated that there will be less noise than there is now because the animals will be held for less time and you already have trucks coming in and out. So if you have the same operations as you have now and you add animals and you add trucks coming in and out, how does that equal less noise?
Eduardo, again, right now we're having trucks coming in and they're bringing livestock in here because we're processing at a different place. So if we build this facility here, the trucks will come in once. We don't have to ship them out anymore. Okay, now, there's ways to work. It all depends on the orders that come. So if I have an order for 200 animals only, then I can only order 200 animals. Maybe I don't need a big truck. Maybe I don't need 2 trailers. I need 1. So all depends on the orders. But again, that will be all subtract from it. We're going to reduce that because we're not going to ship our animals again. Do you understand?
But you'll have trucks coming in to take the product out.
Yes, we will have trucks that will take the product out, yes.
Instead of taking animals out.
Yeah,
they'll
but it
taking
won't
product.
be
Your time
5
is up.
trucks.
Thank you.
It will be 2 trucks, that's it.
So my name is Bob Hahn. I live at 14806 Azalea Lane in Woodstock. So I have a couple questions. So we're hearing this is going to be a 5-6 day a week operation. Is there anything that prevents this from going to 2 shifts or 3 shifts?
The inspector's time.
Yeah, well, it's only a 1 shift time.
It's going to be based on the state inspector and the time that the state inspector is there. Right now, there's no need, no indication that we're going to go to a longer inspection time.
But you could. There's nothing in the ordinance conditional use permit that would prevent this from being 2 shifts.
There's nothing, yes, currently in the conditions that would bar it from going beyond a single shift.
Okay. So who inspects the operation and how often? The fact that there's an inspector during the processing, that basically means it's daily, continuously inspected?
Correct.
Okay. So if this meat is intended for resale at a restaurant, is it not true that it has to be a USDA inspector on site, not just state of Illinois?
It depends on if it goes over state lines. The USDA, Illinois state, all depends on if it crosses state lines. So if your product is leaving the state of Illinois, then it has to be USDA inspected. If it's sold within the state of Illinois, it can be Illinois state inspected.
Okay, so you're sure of that, okay. All right, there's been a lot of discussion about the 24 hours. So last time there was a comment that the animals, the cattle that come in, need to be rested for a period of time, otherwise the meat doesn't turn out well, okay? So if that's true, what's to prevent animals intended to be processed from temporarily being stored for 2-3 days in the animal ag portion of the facility and then moved into the processing facility?
Yeah, 2-3 days. That's
So, if I may, it's hours that they're on the facility. What you don't want is for them to walk off the truck and walk right onto the floor. So I know in my operation, I like to deliver them the night before. That way they get eight to 12 hours to calm.
Okay, so there does not need to be 2 days, 3 days, whatever.
No, sir.
But there's nothing to prevent an animal intended to be processed from temporarily being put with the rest of them in the egg portion, is that true? And then designated for processing later?
So I think that issue is going to be the one that we talked about earlier with good animal husbandry. You don't necessarily want to put a foreign animal in with your herd in order to keep down that risk of sickness. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Chuck Cruzy. I live at 4505 Alden Road. I'm also the Heartland Township Supervisor. That and $1.05 will get you a senior coffee at McDonald's. I have a question for the traffic gentleman here. I have a letter here dated October 28th from the McHenry County Department of Transportation saying that because of this product or this process, that this will become a major access route. It states also in here that they'll probably eventually could require a turn lane. And also, we did a little homework too, obviously. We took the petitioner's statements about the number of vehicles and so on and so forth and came up with a little list. You're a little short. What do you have to comment on that? I don't think you included everybody that's going to come and go, all the trucks and trailers and so on and so forth.
Okay, let me answer the first question. That's why McHenry County asked for a traffic study to determine if we need turn lanes. And when you talked about major, you're referring to major access. Basically, the county, as well as other counties, have, like a minor access, which generally is a single-family home, maybe an access point to a utility, electric yard or gas main or whatever, maintenance service yard or a farm cut. So those are very low generators. It doesn't take much traffic for then it to become a major access point.
I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
So that's what I think he was referring to.
Okay, anyway, on their letter here on page 3 of 4, they have very preliminary estimate, 58 trips per day. I don't know if that's the number you used or whatever, but that was the people working, employees, trips in and out, business, delivery. It's only 58 trips in and out of that. Is that what you used for yours, or is that a different number?
Well, I did it hourly, but if we were to come up with daily, it would probably be very similar to that number.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lower your knees. You're fine. I just don't want chatter on the record.
Chair deserves
Yes, she does.
I don't hear it. I do it during the break. I go to the end of the hallway. More privacy. Few people know. It's a nice little walk. Tyler does. He's a farmer. Attorney seems to know what he's talking
And I had to write it down to say, okay, excuse me.
That's what Reagan did.
No, it's obvious that everyone's opposed.
He said something.
We're fine.
Oh, yeah.
I never voted.
I agree with that one too. I always like Connie a lot. The first, I was in high school when Carter and Ford were going against
In
each
green.
other.
She's got the same shirt on that you do. No, it's green. The green lady. The cute one with the glasses. All of us. And her mother and dad did too.
That was the other. Yeah.
I have a Ross Pro sign in my basement to this day. Yes.
I just made some homemade bread and I can bring some.
She's right about the giant suckers.
I can't give up.
Good projects back in the day.
I'll call the meeting back to order. Everyone, please have a seat. Or at least stop talking.
Hey!
People, the meeting is starting again, so we need you to be quiet. Okay, so the testimony portion by the petitioner is finished. So at this time, we would start with testimony from members of the public. So because I don't see us being able to finish today, I want to poll my board members. I would like the public, if possible, to be able to give their comments today, so you don't have to come back again. But normally, we take testimony from the staff first. So I just want to poll my members if you're fine with taking testimony from the public, allowing them to have their comments, and then if we don't get to honest report today, we can do that at another time. Are we okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, on this side, we don't have Mr. Cozen, but Mary, you're okay with that?
I don't see the difference.
Okay.
I mean, whether Anna speaks today or the next time, I think we
Okay.
should stay according to the way we go, so.
So what we're going to do with the consensus of the board is we're going to allow the public to have your say. So right now, any member of the public that wants to make a comment regarding this petition, you'll be allowed 3 minutes to do so. And so I want you, so we can get through everybody, and I would like you to line up so we can go one right after the other if possible. And you'll have 3 minutes again, and I'll use my telephone timer. And again, as Vicky's reminded me, please be respectful. You have your opportunity to give your comments. We ask you to be respectful of the board and the petitioner as well. So I'll go ahead, sir, if you'd like to come up and make your comments. And then anybody else who wants to make comments, just line up, please. Thanks.
My name is Nick Jacob, 14815 Lilac Lane, Woodstock. I still see that there's still a lot of questions. One thing that hasn't been talked about is the aquifer that the well's going to go down to. Is it considered full or depleted? And will there be a surety bond protecting anybody's well that's within a lot more than 500 feet? Because that covers no houses, quite literally. That I see that is the county going to protect any of the homeowners and their wells that pulls out of that aquifer? And I'm sorry, right now, I can't give this a go-ahead until I see more answers. Thank you.
Next.
Anita Barger, 14616 Honeysuckle Lane, Heartland Township resident. My comment is regarding property values. I know that up in Harvard, the original slaughterhouse burned 2 years ago. And since then, the residents there, and I know the law has changed, there's new ruling about how close you can build to this type of facility. And it's been 2 years, and the residents there don't want it rebuilt there, even though it couldn't be. But since then, I think the property owners have seen growth in their property value increase in value since it's been gone. Heartland Township is a rural area. It's a desirable place to live, and it can see growth too. My fear is that this slaughterhouse will be built, this commercial slaughterhouse will be built, and Heartland Township will not have that growth. Will be hindered by the building of this slaughterhouse. Their property values will not go up or be able to have their full potential once this is built. That's my comment.
Al Wilson, 14609 Honeysuckle Lane. Al Wilson, 14609 Honeysuckle Lane. I do believe that this development will diminish the property values in the area. Slaughterhouses are notorious for their smell due to the decomposition of organic matter, animal waste, blood, and bodily fluids, all of which will be stored on site until the holding tanks are pumped. As this is a year-round facility, the smell will be year-round. I personally visited Slaughterhouse in Union a few weeks ago. On a breezy day, it smelled. Furthermore, I spoke to an employee on a phone a few days later who confirmed the facility generates an odor even though their storage tanks were pumped twice a week. Do not be fooled when you're told the smell is negligible. It is not. If you live or work in this neighborhood, you should be prepared to keep your windows shut, cut back on outside activities, and get accustomed to the 30 or so large animal trailers per week that will be visiting the facility. The building will be lit at night, and you may hear the sound of refrigerators running 24/7. With regard to the effect of the slaughterhouse on neighboring property values, Mr. Gillespie indicated that he provided evidence that the old Jones packing facility outside of Harvard actually increased the value of surrounding properties. He based this on the fact that people built homes near the facility. I believe houses were built near the facility because the property was cheap. The homes made the property more valuable, not the facility. I also believe the property may be more valuable now that the facility is no longer there. It's one thing to choose to build a home near a facility like a slaughterhouse or a sewage treatment plant. It's another to have a slaughterhouse or sewage treatment plant built near the existing homes. I'm fairly certain that current zoning laws were enacted to provide more separation between these types of facilities and residential construction. These types of facilities are better suited in industrial properties where few people live outside and have outside family activities that will be almost non-existent. How does the addition of a slaughterhouse to any neighborhood make that neighborhood more desirable to live in or make the houses more valuable? I don't know of anyone who would choose to live near a slaughterhouse if they were given a choice. Thank you.
Richard Hilton, 3237 East Lake Shore Drive, Wonder Lake. I would encourage the ZBA that if this is approved, that there definitely have some sort of a leak detection device for those underground tanks. Our groundwater system in the Nippersink watershed is being threatened by development. The water supply is diminishing, and recharge is questionable at best. So anything we can do to protect the groundwater that exists would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Sorry, do you need my name again?
Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Isla Anderlich. Address to, or just name?
Address to.
310 North Rose Farm Road, Woodstock. To start, I would like to make it known that Charles Eldridge, a member of this board, disclosed at the last meeting that a member of his family has a personal connection to the Olakes, which is a violation of the McHenry County Ordinance 2.80.060 conflict of interest, and an official complaint has been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals. Moving on, Mr. and Mrs. Olake, while I commend you for your commitment to pursuing your entrepreneurial dreams, you do not seem to comprehend what compliance to our county's rules and regulations include. You seem vastly underprepared in regard to the numbers of your own business venture. You seem unable to give exact answers, and you fail to convince me of your level of ability to run the operation proposed ethically and in compliance with local, state, and federal rules and regulations. I would also like to add that while you say your business would be a benefit to our local communities, the statement is more in regard to the benefit to yourself. In my opinion, based on what has been presented today and at the last meeting, you do not plan to bolster or partner with the McHenry County agricultural business in any way, shape, or form beyond that of your own interests. I find your proposal to be disingenuous, and I would implore the board to deny any formal proposals. I'd like to thank the board for your time.
Hello again. Megan Burns, 14821 Redbud Lane, Woodstock, Illinois. I'm here to express my strong opposition to the conditional use permit requested by Olagis. Let me begin by saying this. Our community is not opposed to agriculture or small business, but this is not a great fit for our zoning, for our infrastructure, our residents, or our safety. According to the applicant, the facility will process 500 goats and 15 cattle. Despite this scale, it will only create a handful of jobs, and the meat will not be sold locally. Our community will absorb the impact while the benefits, both economical and nutritional, will leave town. To make this project possible, the applicant is asking for a zoning change. This is not a small ask. Rezoning this land sets a precedent. It permanently opens the area to further industrial development. Is this the future we want for our community? Even more concerning is the safety record of this company. In March of 2023, the existing facility near Harvard caught fire with nearly $1 million worth of damage, destroyed multiple buildings, and used 260,000 gallons of water to extinguish. Multiple fire departments were called, and water had to be shuttled in due to the lack of hydrants. this scenario could easily play out in Heartland. Now ask yourself, if the fire occurred at the same time in our community and someone needed emergency help, a house was on fire, medical call at Valley High, or a car accident, if the department is responding to an industrial fire that demands that level of manpower and water, someone else in town might be left waiting or worse. This is not just a business risk, it's a community risk. Our fire and water systems could be quickly overwhelmed if something similar happens. And unfortunately, this is not an isolated case. Fires have occurred at Deli Star in Fayetteville, Smithfield Foods in Monmouth, Wisconsin River Meats, and Newlywed Foods in Chicago. These incidents show a clear pattern. Meat processing and slaughter operations carry a real and recurring risk. When something goes wrong, the entire community feels the effects. On top of that, the daily concerns aren't minor either. Odor, water runoff, animal noise, drop in property values. The choice is clear. The risk and permanent changes this facility would bring are not justified by the limited and externalized benefits. I ask you respectfully and firmly, deny this conditional use permit. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Laurel Sepka, 2312 Murray Road. My family and I have owned and live on the adjacent property to the east for over 22 years. There's our house, our outbuilding, our vegetable garden. And that's what we look at every day. So we're all clear. My house is 605 feet from the proposed slaughterhouse building, but it's only 420 feet from the parcel's property line. That's where the holding pens for the feeding operation are located. This does not comply with HH1. Water depletion, well contamination, air pollution, and the constant noise don't stop at 500 feet. The Center for Biological Diversity cites numerous studies showing that commercial slaughterhouses are one of the largest polluters of air and water with airborne toxins causing breathing and heart difficulties, along with respiratory irritation. I'm gravely concerned for my family's health if we are forced to live near a slaughterhouse. My husband is permanently immunocompromised due to a heart transplant. Additionally, we've always planned to build a home for our daughter on our undeveloped parcel, but we will be forced to abandon that plan if this conditional use permit is granted. This proposed slaughterhouse is not conducive to the area and the property. It is located in close proximity to numerous residents, beautiful farms, and borders Slough Creek, which means that runoff will feed into the Fox River. Our community is home to approximately 100 people that live within 1 mile of the property, plus an additional 80 plus at Valley High Nursing Home, which is located only a half a mile away. Many of our residents are elderly and or immunocompromised. We are all concerned that this proposed commercial facility will endanger our health, safety, quality of life, and negatively impact the area and the enjoyment of our properties. We strongly oppose the approval of this commercial facility in our peaceful rural community. For the above reasons, the petitioner has not met the standards 1, 3, and 4. I respectfully ask the board to deny this conditional use permit. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Larry Sepka, 2312 Murray Road. Like my wife said, our backyard is about 400 and, when I'm standing out in the vegetable garden, it's about 450 feet away from the property line. 420, I'm sorry. The petitioner's team cannot even tell us how much noise is going to be made off of this proposed slaughterhouse just from the reefer units alone. We do not feel like listening to this noise 24 hours a day all summer long. This project also goes against McHenry County rules that no residential structure could be within 500 feet of a slaughterhouse, yet there's a house on the property. We see a school bus pull up to in front of that house every day. A young child gets on and off the bus. Is this any place for a child to be raised with a slaughterhouse in their backyard? I don't think anybody sitting there would agree. For that, we ask that you deny the request for the petition. Thank you.
Chuck Cruzy, 4505 Alden Road, Woodstock. Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Zoning Board of Appeals, I would ask you to think real seriously about denying this petition for the simple reason that it's a conditional use. There's approval for standards for conditional use. There's 10 of them. Conditional uses are rules, are they not? I have been fortunate or unfortunate enough to have taken time to research the petitioner's previous business practices. I had pleasant conversations with the Illinois Department of Agriculture. I had pleasant conversations with the McHenry County Health Department, both in the Animal Control Department and the Health Department. The violations alone from the Illinois Department of Agriculture were 39 separate violations in Lawrence. This shows to me that the petitioner cannot follow rules. Conditions are rules. Please, ladies and gentlemen, think real hard and serious about this, if you would grant this, that this gentleman's track record is such that he cannot follow them. We will be stuck with that in Heartland Township. I'm running for supervisor again for another 4 years, and I'm going to have to look at this and smell this. And the smell doesn't bother me so much because, after all, I grew up on a hog farm, and if you can grow up on that, you can stand anything. But it's kind of ridiculous to think that the people in Heartland and the people that live at Valley High are going to have to put up with the noise, the smell, and everything else that goes along with a slaughterhouse. I am old enough that I was fortunate enough or not fortunate enough to remember the Chicago stockyards. I went in there with my dad several times to the slaughterhouses. You want to talk about a smell. That smell will get in your nose and stay there forever. There's a few of us in this room remember the Hebron slaughterhouse, the Hebron Packing Company. We also took cattle there. Even though it was a modern, quotes unquotes, facility, you still had plenty of noise, pollution, and smell that took place. And I would implore you, ladies and gentlemen of the ZBA, to deny the petitioner on these grounds. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Is there anyone else that has a statement they would like to make regarding this petition? And Mr. Kuda, you'd be making that closing statement on behalf of Heartland Township at the end of everything? I will allow that as a, and you would like to do that after the staff report?
Yes.
Okay, I will allow that at the next, the date of hearing. But that will be the end of all other public comment. And I don't think, yes, go ahead, Anna. Are you an official objector, Mr. Kuda?
On behalf of Heartland Township, we did file a written objection.
Okay.
Anna Kurtzman, Senior Planner, for the record here. So I did receive this document just before the start of this hearing, and it is public testimony, so I would like to read it into the record now.
Thank you for that reminder.
Okay, so this says, "Stop the slaughterhouse, protect our natural resources in Heartland Township, Woodstock, Illinois." The issue, Olege Farms Meatpacking, Inc., located at 15712 Nelson Road, Woodstock, Illinois, in Heartland Township, is requesting an A1 agricultural district to A1 with conditional use permit for food processing with animal slaughter. The proposal includes new construction of a commercial slaughterhouse and food processing facility. The applicant has estimated weekly slaughtering of 400 to 500 lambs, goats, and sheep, plus 15 to 17 cows. Intent. The intent of this petition, created by Heartland Township citizens with the full support of all trustees for Heartland Township, is to notify McHenry County Planning and Development, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and McHenry County Board that collectively we oppose a conditional use permit under consideration for Olege Farms Meatpacking, Inc. We feel this proposed commercial slaughterhouse facility goes against the spirit of the ordinance as written, and the applicant does not meet the approval standards for a conditional use permit. Concerns. The proposed commercial slaughterhouse would be located in close proximity to numerous residences, beautiful farms, the Valley High Nursing and Rehabilitation of McHenry County, and government facilities, including Heartland Township offices and McHenry County Department of Transportation. Resource depletion. This would be a family-owned and operated commercial slaughterhouse using precious McHenry County resources. The majority of the livestock will come from outside McHenry County and be sold to businesses primarily in Chicago, as stated by applicant. Negative impacts. Slaughterhouse will use massive amounts of groundwater, putting stress on an already undercharged aquifer. Land and noise pollution. Constant odor and air pollution consistent with slaughter facilities. Significant decrease in neighboring property values. Opinion. Opposed slaughterhouse would be best located on a parcel zoned industrial, which is better suited to handle waste and water demands, traffic, and emergency services. Community outreach. Help protect Heartland Township and surrounding communities. If this commercial slaughterhouse permit is approved, it will change our community forever. Please take a moment to sign this petition and spread the word. We hope to see you at the public hearing. Then the date and time of this date is at the bottom there. There's a page here that includes public comments. David, slaughterhouse will use massive amounts of groundwater, putting stress on an already undercharged aquifer. Land and noise pollution. Constant odor and air pollution consistent with slaughter facilities. Significant decrease in neighboring property values. John, I'm opposed to this commercial slaughterhouse being operated in Heartland Township. This is not helping local farmer, businesses, or residents. The majority of animals being brought to this facility for slaughter come from out-of-state auctions and are sold to, I think it was supposed to be sold, to restaurants in Chicago. I do not feel that the citizens of Heartland Township should have the burden of the noise, smell, and truck traffic that will be created if this commercial slaughterhouse is approved. Jennifer, I'm against this slaughterhouse due to it being only a few miles from our home. I have no desire to live near a facility killing hundreds of animals /week. This should be an industrial area, not an agricultural area. I am concerned about noise, smell, environmental impact, and property values. And there is a typed list of names and addresses, well, not even addresses, just names and community, indicating 69 people were involved with this petition.
Okay, thanks for that, Anna. So the dates we have for continuing this would either be a Wednesday in April or the first Thursday of May. We need all of our board members available, so I will poll them first if there's anyone that has a conflict for a Wednesday in April or the first Thursday in May. Okay, so April 10th is out. And April 9th is, oh, okay.
And April 2nd.
Okay, so the first two Wednesdays of April are out. So as far as the petitioner? Okay. So we're looking at the 23rd, or the 30th, or the 1st of May. 1st of May is a Thursday. Are fine for you?
Madam Chairman, the petitioners, April 23rd would work for the petitioners.
April 23rd is good for you?
Yes.
So there's no problem for anyone on the board for April 23 on a Wednesday?
No, none.
Don't believe so.
Okay. So this hearing will then be continued to, yes, go
If
ahead.
I may
You have
make a request to
question?
the board, is there any further requirement for our traffic engineer to be present at the next hearing?
No, there'll be
From
no
the board.
other
Okay.
testimony but your closing statement.
Okay. I'm sorry, apparently we have a conflict with April 23rd.
Oh, you
I'm
do have
so-
a conflict?
I'm sorry.
Okay. So should we go to May 1st, it's Thursday?
I am booked on the 1st with an all-day
So
hearing.
April the 30th, which is the Wednesday?
April 30th, how about that one?
We've reconsidered. If it works for the board, we'll go with the 23rd date. We'll move our other thing.
Well, you could also do the 30th of April if that works for you.
23rd is fine. Sorry.
So you'd like to go to April 23?
That's correct.
At
Okay.
1:30 PM in this room.
All right, so this meeting is continued to April 23 at 1:30 PM in this room. At this time, the hearing is continued.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.